Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Al Black Show. Before we get stuck in, I just wanted to ask that if you enjoy the show, it would be awesome if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel. And feel free to share it around your mates. Okay, let's get into it. As the former co-owner of Future Entertainment, Jason Ayoubi is a legend in the Australian dance music scene, being responsible for Summadayze, Future Music, Two Tribes, and Good Life. With a career spanning 25 years in the live music industry, he also toured some of the world's largest festivals, including Gatecrasher, Ministry of Sound, God's Kitchen, and Global Gathering. Starting out managing 3 of Melbourne's top clubbing venues, Paladin, Billboard, and Mansion, everything started going ballistic when he and long-term business partner Mark James launched Orbit at Mansion. From there, they started doing parties at the Docks, the Myer Music Bowl, and of course, all across Australia. At its peak, Future Music Festival was shifting a massive 220,000 tickets each tour, and that's just one of the parties. Previously recognised by the Australian Music Directory as one of the most powerful people in the industry, Ayoubi has also been heavily involved with various advisory groups over the years in the ongoing effort to make dance parties safer for all those involved. These days, you can find him on the conference circuit and back working with his old mate from the future days, Scott Robertson, as the two of them head up the boutique music operation Division Agency. So I hope you enjoy my chat with Jason Ayoubi. Okay, Jace, thank you very much for joining me on the Al Black Show.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Al. Lovely to see you, mate. It's been ages.
It has been a wee while.
Yeah.
So, and what a ride you've had.
Oh, mate, yeah, no, it is. Surprised I've got any brain cells left.
You and me both. So just as I was putting the questions together for this, I was just thinking maybe I should actually made a series out of this particular interview. It's just going to go forever. I hope you've got a packed lunch and some water there, because I think we could be here for a while.
I'm in the vein of Michael Jordan documentary. I've got my glass of scotch ready. I don't know if it's ginger ale or scotch he's drinking. I'm pretty sure it was scotch, I think.
Yeah,
so I'm set up.
When in doubt, make it scotch.
Absolutely.
Exactly. All right. So growing up, were you the guy that was always organising everyone else's social calendars, or did the whole party thing come later in life for you?
No. I was. I think I just had this inherent thing, but I think it comes from my parents too. It's just, you know, that hospitality gene and being there. So yeah, no, the my BC or HSC wrap up party was at my house. I was always, you know, my dad had run restaurants. I'd worked behind the bar and did lots of things from the time I was about 15. So yeah, right. I was well and truly, you know, brought up in that sort of you know, that scene.
Yeah.
Well, that was just being hospitable, I suppose. And my parents are both very hospitable people. When, you know, anyone comes over, they, you know, my mum force feeds everyone, and
yeah,
that's the normal bog thing. Yeah,
so, absolutely. So speaking of your parents, is your background, like your surname's quite unique? Is it Syrian or Egyptian?
My dad's the Lebanese, and
right.
My mum's of Lebanese descent because she was born here. But you know, we were really brought up, and I'm not multilingual, which is such a shame, because I would love to speak Arabic and have another language, but I'm just very much brought up in an Aussie environment, playing footy and cricket and all of that stuff. So, but yeah, no, definitely still have those genes in me though.
Yeah, and speaking of growing up, where was that for you? I'm assuming it was
Melbourne,
somewhere in
Melbourne. Yeah, so born and bred in Melbourne. Moved around quite a lot because my dad owned restaurants, and he periodically sold them. So we went from living in Macedon out in the just outside of Melbourne to Moonee Ponds to Templestowe to Croydon to various other places. You know, so and my dad's main famous restaurant was a place called Cafe Neon in South Melbourne, which was like which was quite a big deal. Cool. At the time, but so we moved around quite a lot, but yeah, always been a Melbourne boy.
Yeah, and I guess you know, you mentioned the HSC. So after HSC, it was Swinburne Uni. Is that where you ended up?
Yeah, no, I started off at La Trobe doing economics.
Yep.
And at the same time, I was working, as you do, in bars and I was working at the I started at the Minzies of Rialto as a barman there doing cocktail stuff, and then I was working at the Paladin, and that's where everything took off for me, because that's where my bosses actually didn't end up paying the landlord rent. When I was about 21, I was either bar manager there or whatever else, and the landlord came up to me one day and said, "Hey, I'm about to change the locks and kick your bosses out. Would you mind running a joint for me until I can sell it?" And I said, "Sure. What 21-year-old wouldn't want the key to a city nightclub?"
Unbelievable.
So then I
So this is, sorry, just to set the scene, this is about what, 93, 94?
Yeah, oh no, this is about 98. Yeah, long earlier than that. Yeah, 93. Yeah, geez, I'm fucking old, aren't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, 93. Yeah, so we got the guys from Razor who were doing the Razor Club in to do a Friday night called Savage. It was one of the nights I instituted, and then there was a Thursday night that we started, which was called the Clockwork Orange, and had Francis Leach from Triple J playing, and it was more indie alternative. So we had the indie alternative thing, we had the house thing, a house and like manic, very eclectic, eccentric, gay, straight, you name it, on this Friday, which was Savage, was got voted as one of the best clubs in the world at the time, and you had people like Madonna and Jeremy Healy and various other people just dropping in, which was a wild ride when you're 21 running a club, and then yeah, so and then we had like a Saturday night going, which was like a urban African sort of night, and then on Sunday we did this thing called Ital Night, which was all the Italian waiters from Lygon Street after they finished their shift come down and would so within about 3 or 4 months, true to his word, the landlord said, "Right, yep, you've turned this place around, so there you go. I've got a buyer, and here you go. Here's a bit of a whack." So from there, I took that, and instead of just being a normal person and going back to uni, and said, "Hey, yeah, no, I quite like this." So then I went into the Mansion, which was
Hold on.
Yeah.
I think you might have missed a step. So I just wanted to go back and just touch on Savage, because
yep.
It was easily one of my favourite.
Am I allowed to smoke on a podcast?
Mate, you can do whatever you want. It's a podcast. There's no rules.
You shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, I had oh shit, I've forgotten his surname. Ben, who used to do all your stage management at Future, and he was working with Seth Troxler. Ben Harrison. Harrison, yeah. So yeah. I think he pumped through about half a pack when I had his conversation with him.
Oh,
so,
you've had one with Benny as well.
He was the last person on, actually. So
right.
Yeah, so that was good. So yeah. he's got a few good stories.
He has got a few good stories. It definitely has, and he doesn't mind talking. You can talk underwater with a mouthful of marbles, that kid.
Exactly. So I mean, yeah, like going back to Savage. So how did it come about?
I love you, Ben. By the way, I love you.
Exactly. Sorry for getting your surname too, Ben. Yeah, just going back to Savage there. As I said, it's one of my favorite club nights of all time. You've got Gavin Campbell, one of the most iconic figures in the Melbourne scene.
Absolutely. How lucky am I to have mentors like Gavin and Steve Young and Red at the time? I mean, they were pioneers of the whole Melbourne scene.
Yeah. So did they come to you, or did you go to them?
Gavin in particular, he's like, just before his time, and that was my foray into that scene, as being around that crazy mob. Which
lucky was, you. I mean, there's a couple of things that I remember about Savage. One of them was I rocked up one night and I was just looking down the queue. I thought I'd see if there's anyone I know I could maybe have got them, past. And there's this guy who was the head boy of my boarding school in Scotland, like 4 years before that. Just standing in the queue. I was like, random. So the two of us have had a great night, and he's still in Melbourne these days. But of course, the big thing for Savage for so many people was, about 6 in the morning, the minute the sun, you see people nipping outside.
Such a unique building.
Sunny's on.
Old Melbourne jail, like the old prison, or the old police station there, and they've done the renovations with a glass atrium roof.
Yeah.
And but the funny thing was that, you know, that was one of the best parts about it, because when the sunlight came in, you could see all the weird and wonderful people that were there. But at the same time, we had a license restriction, so we had to stop serving alcohol from like 5 until 7. So as the sun came up, you couldn't get a drink.
You know what the funny thing about that is?
That made it better or worse, but you know, somehow everyone kept themselves occupied for a couple of hours. They couldn't drink.
Do you know what the funny thing is? I've never even noticed that. Like, I was having so much fun on the dance floor. I think that you know, it wasn't a problem.
Yeah. Oh, look, and you know, the DJs that were there still to this day, you know, I mean, my favorites, you know, Arlen, the sound monster, the sound minister.
Sound minister. Yep.
Yeah, you know, we used to have to light a candelabra every time we came on to do the closing set. Prima donna. And you know, Frankie D was playing, Johnny Run was playing, you know, Jane. It was just you know, the burgeoning part of, you know, Melbourne dance scene, and they're all converged in that one club, which was fucking amazing.
Yeah, and so between that club and the Mansion, Billboard, I believe. You were done?
No. There was a skip. No, so I went straight from Savage the first time to the Mansion, and Alex, mate, was still there, and I went in and worked with him for about a 3-week stint. I went in there and took over as the GM of that place before the owners decided to turn it into some sort of like rockabilly pub or something. And then from there I went to Billboard and started up Orbit at Billboard with Chris Knight and Mark James, which was obviously that was the start of the Future thing.
Right. I didn't know that Nighty was involved. I didn't know Nighty was involved with Orbit at the beginning.
Yeah. Nighty was involved in Orbit. Yeah.
Yep.
And so we did Orbit at Billboard, and then we moved it to Chasers. Oh no, then we went back to the Mansion, and then we moved it to Chasers. Yeah, gee, I can't keep up with all that stuff. It's just so long ago.
Yeah. I remember those old that was actually, I think, my first ever gig, paid gig in Clubland, was promoting at Orbit.
Was it?
So there you go.
There you go.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
So obviously, you mentioned Mark James just before.
Yep.
So we're around about 1995 at this point. The two of you obviously got together and formed what became one of the most formidable dance music partnerships in Australia, and when you think about it, the world.
Yep. Yep.
I'm guessing you guys were thinking even bigger than that, though, because your first venture, as you've said, was called Orbit. So, so how did
I don't know if that's what we were thinking at the time, but yeah, no, it was you know, definitely the Mansion. We started, you know, Mark had a history of touring international DJs at the Metro and doing that sort of thing before we joined up. And obviously we both had a different circle of contacts and whatever else, but obviously me coming from the Savage and the Mansion stuff, and him doing that stuff, and then bringing those and with Nighty as well, bringing those DJs into that environment, and it was such a great building. It was sort of made for just doing what it did. So, you know, an old rickety officers club from World War II, which had a 24-hour license, and you could do pretty much whatever you wanted to, and we did. We did. yeah. So and then having, you know, so it was sort of, everything just grew organically, because we were touring, we were bringing DJs like John Digweed and Sasha and Jeremy Healy and Dave Seaman and Judge Jules and all of those guys, and we'd have particularly on like the what ended up being the Two Tribes / Future Music Festival dates, the March long weekend. We'd have, like, you know, we'd tour a Renaissance or a Digweed Sash thing, and we'd have like 2,000 or 3,000 people waiting, lined up outside, and we can only fit 1,500 people inside. So it was sort of organic to say, okay, hey, we need somewhere bigger. We need to do something bigger with what we've got here. So that was when we went to and started doing some docs parties and started started doing. Our first one was we used the old exhibition building in Carlton, which was a bit of a coup at the time. I think we were the first dance party in there, which was great. And I think we did a Ministry of Sound thing, which was fantastic. And then they would never let us do it again because I think there's so many noise complaints and various people smoking in a heritage building. And
was that a good shed?
It was that wasn't a shed. It was like, I mean, it was built as an exhibition hall. It was built as the first Parliament of Australia. So basically, so it's this heritage building in Carlton, which is amazing.
Yeah,
fantastic. But you know, there's so many residents around there that we needed to find somewhere else. And the next couple of shows were Trade and various other things that we did at the docks. And they just went off. They were, we were getting like 7,000-8,000 people, and which was huge.
Yeah. And how did you meet Mark though? Like, take a step back, because he's a few years older than you.
So Mark was he was already doing some tours and stuff at the Metro and bringing some DJs through. And we'd met through the Traps. I mean, it was a very small industry, the nightclub industry at that stage, and lo and behold, he ended up moving next door to me, of all things.
Wow.
Yeah, so
random.
we that was pretty random. So we had ended up having a few after work sessions, and we got along pretty well, and then over a drink or whatever else, decided that we should probably do something together, and that's how we got going.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
One of you said, I've got an idea, and that was the rest is history. So if I was going to ask you about highlights from your time at Mansion, I'm assuming the night that you two popped in after playing the Pop Mart gig in Melbourne.
That's a funny story, because my now ex-wife was the door girl at the time, and I remember telling her, I said, look, got this call that you two are going to turn up to the club. Here's all these drink cards, and as soon as they turn up, let me know, because I want to obviously look after them. And she goes, yeah, no problem. And she's going, there's no way you two are coming to this club, man. You're just going, whatever. Yeah. So she then proceeded, as all her mates came through, she started giving all the drink cards to all her mates. So she was so embarrassed when actually when Bono and Linda Evangelista turned it up at the time, that she never told me. So I see the entourage walking through, and I've gone, oh, that's not good. Right, you're fired.
Yeah. And then you got married to her.
Hey?
And then you got married to her.
No, we still got married.
Yeah. Shout out to Mel. Yeah. Because that night, was it Christy Turlington or Linda Evangelista?
Linda Evangelista, I think.
Linda.
Yeah.
Whichever one it was. I remember Jean was DJing that night, I believe, and out of the corner of his eye, he noticed that someone was going through his records. Yeah, he's about to turn around and give them a good old serve, and then he's seen who it was. He's like, oh, hey, that's okay. Look away.
Yeah.
So
it was good. No, he was a really good sport. Obviously, he didn't want any photos or anything.
No.
But it was good. He wasn't precious at all. He wanted to, we got him a special room and got him drinks and looked after them, and obviously, but he wanted to just go out and smoke a spliff with the punters out on the balcony and just experience the club and just have a dance around, and it was great. And that's what that club was all about. It was just everyone was just wrapped it, and he got to experience it, and no one really hassled him either. It was really kind of cool. So,
says a lot for the punters that we go there every week.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Any other highlights from the Mansion days? No, that's
it was just a fantastic time and place to be involved in music in the world, and Melbourne particularly. I think Melbourne still, and I might be very very partisan, but Melbourne still to me is the party capital of Australia, and that time was definitely the time that it was all just burgeoning and starting, and it was just this. It just had raw energy and emotion, and it was great. So
I was about to throw in the word raw there, but you just beat me to it. It definitely had a rawness about it.
It wasn't polished. It was good music, good times, good people, good energy. Having coming from the hospitality industry and done various different nights where you know, people would get drunk and there'd be fights and whatever else. You know, you had just that, just loving energy about everyone, and it was just, you know, everyone's looking after each other and they're having a good time, and that's what it was all about. So, you know, so that was good, and we all didn't mind a kick on either. I mean, we had the mega bar going afterwards.
Oh yeah.
So straight after the match, we'd go to the mega bar and do it all over again. So it was like, you know, I think there was a period of time there I've reflected that my mid-20s was like I think maybe the Thursday night going to the Ritz, the Friday was Savage or whatever. So Saturday I had to work, but it was, you know, ended up at a recovery somewhere. Sunday, you know,
Monkey.
No, that was later.
All right.
You know, but it was like, you know, you'd go from Thursday through to Mega Bar or to Hellfire on Sunday night, and you know, you then go to sleep for a couple of days and then get up and do it all over again. But
and then Mega Bar started opening on a Monday. It was like, oh no.
I tried to avoid that one.
Yeah, and I failed miserably there and ended up there plenty of times on a Monday. But okay, so obviously you guys were killing it. Everything was going great. You touched on it before where you said that yourself and Mark were like, hey, we need a bigger space. So
yeah. Look, I think we'd done a couple of docs parties which weren't the most unique thing that was happening, because also Foundation was doing their Winter Days thing, and Hardware and Richie was doing, you know, hardware parties at the docks as well. So that wasn't the big idea that we had. But I think the thing that everyone thought we were mad to do was the Summadayze concept, which was the Myer Music Bowl on New Year's Day, because obviously. Yeah, so you've got the book there. So
got the book, man.
Yeah, right. So you know, when we first started, I remember, you know, everyone thought we were mad. We went in, we convinced the bowl that we needed to do a New Year's Day party, and you know, I think the security company was saying, look, you got to pay us up front because this is never going to work. And we're going, oh, like, come on, well, and you know, so and lo and behold, and the first day was you know, we didn't do pre-sale tickets. We said, okay, we've got all local lineup. It was, you know, maybe $25 to get in.
15, I think it was.
There was clouds everywhere. It looked like it was going to rain, and we were just going to destroy the days. We didn't know how it was going to go.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you know, 7,000 people turned up on the first day, and the rest is history. Sold out 25,000 people for 15 years. So, and you know, and the start of a tour concept of people celebrating New Year's on New Year's Day, as opposed to New Year's Eve. So, you know, we killed all the New Year's Eve stuff, and then we took it on tour, and we started sharing the acts that we had with the Fuzzy guys who were doing Field Day in Sydney, who really just copied our concept.
Yeah, I heard you asked them if they wanted to join in, and they went no, and then just started their own thing.
Yeah. No, we actually spoke about doing the Summadayze with those guys, and then they said, "Oh, that's a good idea. We'll just do it ourselves." Anyway, so they ripped us off as well, bastards. Love you guys. And then we started doing the Summer Field Day show together up at the Gold Coast, and then toured it over to Perth, and so that was really where the whole national touring business started from that concept.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, we were really Melbourne focused with all the doc stuff, but that really led to us branching out and starting doing national stuff.
Because I was there that first day, and I remember not knowing what to think, probably a bit like yourself, like from a punter's point of view. And I know I'd been out the night before, but I think that New Year's Eve was the last New Year's Eve I ever went out. It was just like, I walked in that day and I was like, I can feel that in, you know, over the next few years, this is going to get huge, and this is going to be my focus, you know?
Yeah. So we were very lucky. I mean, it was a weird, I mean, we'd done some New Year's Day parties, and obviously it goes back to a bit of the Savage thing, you know, the daylight parties and the how good that could be, and the recoveries that we were doing, and all of the, you know, the daytime stuff. But you know, that energy and especially in Australia, it's summer. It's nice to be outside and being able to take over the city and just pound out great music and exhibit great DJs, and was just definitely one of the highlights.
Yeah, it's kind of funny though, like whenever touring acts, I've noticed since living over in WA for a decade now, like dance parties aside, when touring acts are coming over, it's Sunday afternoon. That's when it kicks off here, and that's when they get booked to play, and it's 2 o'clock till 10 o'clock. So a lot of our stuff's outdoors, even just for a kind of normal act, if you like. But so as far as trying to change an established mindset, as in don't go out New Year's Eve. So don't go out New Year's Eve, go out New Year's Day. Do you think that was the biggest gamble that you've ever taken?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we were like, there wasn't this endless cash flow of money that we had. We were just growing things organically. We were independent promoters that ran some nightclubs and whatever else. It wasn't like, we had a multinational behind us or anything. It was a very, very big punt. If it didn't go right, if it didn't work, that would have been it. We would have been selling everything and whatever else. But luckily it did. We had we took a punt because we believed in what we were doing, I suppose. So, and luckily it worked out, and the rest is sort of, that's where it all sort of changed.
Yeah, but the next year you didn't get the double hit you were after. You were hoping to get New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, and New Year's Eve fell on its arse.
We did Welcome 2000, which was a disaster, and it was probably one of the first things that we'd done with the hardware guys. Before we started Two Tribes with them. But so Richard got on, and we were doing the Welcome 2000 show together. And we had such a great lineup too. I mean, it was outstanding. And obviously coming into the Millennium, thinking, okay, this is going to be fantastic. But Summadayze was just such a juggernaut that no one wanted to go out to that. And even though the lineup wasn't nearly as good on the next day, I mean, so we basically killed ourselves by having the best party in town the next day. So it wasn't so bad, but it wasn't a fantastic thing to go through, because we basically just wiped ourselves out and came back the next. It was like a yo-yo ride on that day. But but then we carried on doing some stuff with Richie and started
we'll get to Two Tribes in a sec. So, because I noticed as well that Wikipedia had the first Summadayze party as January the 1st, 1998, right up until this morning. So,
no, I did it. Really?
Yeah. So
no, it was 99. The first one was from the 99, January 1st, 99, because we had convinced the bowl that we needed a test run before the Millennium. So we're going. So
well, as of this morning, it's down as 1999 because I went in and changed it. So
you changed it?
I changed it. It's the first edit I've ever done of a Wikipedia page in my life.
Well, I'm glad someone's looking at these things.
Absolutely.
I haven't even looked at the Wikipedia page.
Now, what about some of the highlights from those parties, the Summadayze parties? Because I heard there was one guy.
I mean, there's so many highlights. There's so many great performances. There's so many DJs, but I just think it was just always, for me, it was like whoever we had on, getting up on the stage there and looking out at 20,000 people up that amphitheater hill, and just having the time of their lives. I think as a event producer, you don't get that's the buzz you get. It's not, sometimes everyone thinks it's just about money or it's just about business or whatever else, but you don't get to, in very many industries, you don't get to come up with a concept, plan it out, put it on, and then get that instant gratification of seeing what you've created by the reaction that people are having for what you built. So, I mean, that's the drug there. That's the hook. That's what gets you coming back and putting your ass on the line every year to do something better and different. And so
I've been on that stage for the Kiss My Grass parties, and it is an amazing feeling when you're just looking out, or especially when you're on the last set, and everyone's just had the best day, and that is a rush. That is a big rush.
Absolutely. So having that, I mean, but that being said, so many great performances along the way. I can't even list them all. There was just some mind blowing stuff, and getting to tour some of my all-time favorite artists, whether it was Left Field or the Chemical Brothers or the Prodigy or or Fatboy Slim, or Carl Cox, or Danny Tenaglia, or all of those guys. You know, it's just like pinch yourself stuff. Going, oh my God, these are my absolute heroes. These are icons of music, and they're coming to me and going, oh, it's one of the best parties we play in the world.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that's like, doesn't get much better than that.
And then there was the guy that needed stitches after getting hit in the head with a large metal dildo.
There was, yep. We had, here we are. We were sponsored. I think we got. There was a side stage that got sponsored by Sexy Land.
That's right. Yeah.
The guys from the lounge, and they brought in all of these sex toys, and they had a full. I think they convinced me to do it because the concept was that they were going to fill up a pool with lube. So they needed to get the Sexy Land sponsorship. So they were like doing a lube bath at the side stage, or whatever. But Sexy Land, God love them, threw in all of these other sex toys and dildos and various other things that were being handed out to the crowd as a bit of a promotion. And then someone may have just thrown a dildo in the air and it's hit someone and they've had to get stitched. And I've got the call over the mic going, oh yeah, someone needs stitches at the medical tent. So I've gone up there to investigate, obviously, and I've gone, what did you get hit with? Because obviously we're all plastic and this. I mean, God.
Yeah.
And anyway, they pulled out the dildo. This is the culprit here. Oh no.
that guy will be telling that story for months. You know, like, well, that was the day I got hit by a big metal cock.
Yeah.
You mentioned Two Tribes. Let's get on to that one. How did that one come about? Obviously, it was with Richie. You mentioned it before.
Yeah. We you know, obviously we did. You know, again, it's such a small community of people, and there was, you know, we were at the mansion. We had run a few nights together. You know, with Jeff Tyler had a night going at the mansion. It was all that whole techno crew, and as opposed to what we were really doing at the time. I think we were more on that prog tip with Sean Quinn and Casey Taylor and that crew. That was sort of so it was like a natural progression that there was like the two tribes of the music scene in Melbourne, the techno thing that obviously Hardware was doing, and the prog stuff that we were doing, and to do a party together. And we both sort of had something booked on a particular date, and I think we were just discussing that, hey, we're going to kill each other if we do these two things, like two big things on the same day. Why don't we try to do it together? And lo and behold, there was Two Tribes was born on a March long weekend, and we did it. The first one was at Shed 14, and it was just so. I was actually at one point in time I was concerned because of just how full and how crushy it was in places, because it was a little pokey. I mean, it's not a pokey little place. I mean, it was like we'd sold it out, but it was like, you know, it just felt pretty full on. And the following years we took the two sheds. We took sheds 2 and 4 across the docks, and you know, that was just going ballistic. There was like, you know, 20,000 people coming together, and you know, getting to put the best of the house music and prog and techno and all the various different genres together with the two biggest crews at the time doing it. And it was great. I mean, it went for as long as it lasted. It was good. We obviously, the docks got, and there were so many great Two Tribes parties as well. I mean, they were fantastic. So I've been very blessed to be involved in all of these great things.
And I believe it was Simon Digby that came up with the name.
Great people. Oh, I can't really remember who came up with the name. I think it just felt right. I think we were just having a brainstorming session, and it just, you know, obviously there was a Future crew, and then there was the Hardware crew, and it was like, you know, I think Richard came up with something like Totem or something as another company name, and then there was that whole Indian American thing and the tribal thing, and so like it just sort of made sense at the time, and that's how that evolved, and then it was Sheds 2 and 4 for a number of years before the docks got developed into the what is now, is, you know, all the apartment buildings. And as soon as that started happening, I mean, we were getting noise complaints from the first couple in Carlton. I mean, this is how loud we're going. It's a long way away. So, I mean, I mean, the noise restrictions were, I remember having a number of discussions with police as they turned up and we're getting noise complaints all over Melbourne. I'm going, yeah, well, come up here if we turn that. And they go, yeah, you've got to turn it off. I'm going, well, you turn it off, but there might be a riot. So
yeah, exactly.
have a go. He goes, can you turn it down a bit? And I go, well, we can, but I don't want to cause a crowd crush, so we've got to.
It's like the ghost storage machine on Ghostbusters. It's like, I'm not turning it off, but wouldn't it be good if you turn it off?
Not turning that off. No, not at all. So, but then the docks obviously started getting developed, and there was too many residents there, so we're going to keep continuing there.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the. Sorry.
And then we moved it to Melbourne Park, which was that was an eye-opening experience for that venue. I've got to tell you, having us descend on taking over Rod Laver Arena and Hyacinth Arena now as it's known, and the outside courts and I remember a story of when we first took over. I said I had this big R made, and I was getting a cherry picker to put so Rod Laver Arena. I was trying to put an R over the L to turn it into Rod Raver Arena, but they wouldn't let me do that.
Oh, that would have been gold.
And then the Tennis Australia guys, I think we were, at one stage, we had all of our decor guys, and we got all of these. They have all these busts in the Garden Square. They have all these busts of the tennis players that have won, or legends of the game that have won the Australian Open, and we started putting wigs on, these wigs on the busts, and the Tennis Australia guys looking out their window going, what are they doing? You can't put an afro on Rod Laver. What are you doing? You can't put it. And we got told off for that as well. So but hats off to them. I mean, they had the foresight to say, hey, look, we'll trust these guys in, and they really, liked what we developed over the years of having to run these big gigs, and we did it organically because we had to do it safely, and we had to come up with the best practices, because there really wasn't a manual of doing it, and we showed them what we'd done, and they were very supportive. They're going, oh my God, well, you guys are actually more professional and more together, because we've been doing everything from crowd management to security to bar management to all of that stuff, and doing our own manuals up at the same time. And we showed that to the Melbourne Park people, and they've gone, geez, I wish all of our other promoters are doing concerts with this together. So they were very supportive, and it actually worked pretty well. Although it was compared to the docks and the bowl and the other places, I think it was maybe a little too sort of clean cut for what we were doing. But I mean, it definitely had some fun. We had some great parties at Melbourne Park, and it led us to be able to get bands like the Prodigy to come and perform, because we were in such big arenas. So I've still got this one photo of the Prod Laver being so full. I mean, it's got a capacity, but obviously when you're running a festival, you've got free reign to go in between all of the venues, and obviously the Prodigy being such a big draw card at the time when they were on back in the early 2000s, everyone wanted to come into the arena, and I remember the general manager at the time going, oh look, we can't have this many people in the arena. I go, well look, again, if you try and stop it, it's going to be a riot. So
there's the riot button.
The photo, to this day, I think they've never had that many people in Rod Laver Arena for any particular show. So yeah, it was it's a great photo.
And that's what I guess one of the great things about Summadayze at the Bowl is, because it's daylight, you can get away with a lot more in terms of sound.
Oh well, you couldn't. I mean, we still had. I mean, we were facing straight at the Melburnian with our, which is this very highfalutin, very expensive residence in the city centre of Melbourne. So the residents there consisted of parliamentarians and judges and various other things, and
not many ravers then.
No. And also we're right next door to Government House, and I remember one day there was we got the call over the mics that to say that there was a whole heap of the new governor was being inducted on New Year's Day, and we obviously that was a bit of a clash with us. But but the funny thing was that people were like jumping over the fence at Government House, crashing the inauguration of the governor, thinking they were jumping into Summadayze, which was hilarious. But yeah, so we did. I mean, there was everyone. Like, so there was like, I think there was a period of time there that we got sort of reined in a little bit with sound stuff. And I think that's when like everyone's thinking, hey, oh, the sound's terrible or whatever. It's not that we couldn't put it up. It's not that we didn't have a sound system in there that could blow everyone's heads off. It was just that we were under restrictions we have to sort of go that balance between putting on a great show for everyone, but also making sure that the amenity of the community's there so we can actually do it again. Because I mean, after losing a couple of venues to sound, you really want to maintain those ones. So yeah, that was a bit of a tightrope.
So speaking of collaborations, we've mentioned a couple already. So this was also around the same time that you teamed up with the guys at Fuzzy to do Park Life. How did that all come about? Did they
again, because we were already doing Summerfield Days together.
Yeah. So that was first.
That was first.
Yeah.
They were doing. They obviously got their they wanted to do a national tour as well. They would be pretty successful out of Sydney. And we sort of had this little notion that we wouldn't go into damage their market, particularly on New Year's Day, because we were having their thing. And obviously we had our Two Tribes and then Future Music Festival going, and they wanted to. But after Two Tribes had finished, Future Music Festival came out at the same date when we split up with the Hardware crew. And so it was just a natural progression that we would do the Melbourne leg of Park Life. Because we were already in partnership with them with Summerfield Days. So look, that worked really well too. And it was a different gig. It was a different period of time. It was like the start of the summer period.
September it was, I think.
We had some like discussions with them because they wanted to put it on grand final day, because that's the period of time we're going. If you put it in grand final day, it's going to, particularly in Melbourne, forget it. It's far. So they listened to us on most occasions, but unfortunately there was one day there was a drawn grand final, and the next week happened to be the Park Life show, and it definitely affected it. I mean, everyone goes to the grand final in Melbourne. So, but yeah, no, that was a very good party too. And we also did a collaboration with the Good Vibrations guys too. Like Justin did, so he got us to produce the show in Melbourne at Flemington as well. So we've worked pretty much with all of them. Yeah.
And here's another one. I mean, I touched on it before, Kiss My Grass. So that was Future's collaboration with Kiss FM in Melbourne. How did that one come about?
Well, it's a funny story because Spiro, God rest his soul, love and respect. But I think at the time we were having a bit of a Barney about. I think we had to change a date for Two Tribes, or something, and Spiro decided that he wanted to put one of his shows on at the Bowl, and we're going, hang on, that's our thing. And we had the date booked the following day. And anyway, it sort of happened. Obviously had a great relationship with the Kiss guys and all of that. But this sort of argument with Spiro was happening, and he got on the phone to me. He goes, look, can you just let that date go? There's no way you can put a show on this quickly. And I've got the date booked the day before. And we go, no, mate, we can put a show on. He goes, how are you going to put a show on? So I rang up Tim.
Sorry, what was the timeline? Was this like a month out, 2 months?
I think we're on the phone around about New Year's. I was there about. Yeah. So it's around I think it was on the Summerfield Day. So this is January 26th, which is
show you there,
26 days later. He goes, there's no way you're going to be able to throw a show in 26 days. Just let the date go. I'm going, no, kiss my ass, mate. Fuck. So anyway, so how the name came up with I said, I know, let's do a fundraiser at KISS. We've got all the details, we've got all that sort of stuff. So we rang up Timmy and Kate and said, hey, what do you reckon about this idea? And lo and behold, KISS My Grass was born. And it was sort of out of spite, but it was worked so well, and it was great because it was ended up supporting the radio station that was you're putting out, you're supporting the scene so much. So it was funny, but then it went on for years. And Spiro and I made up over the time. Yeah.
And it was great as well for all those DJs at KISS that got to experience playing at the Bowl where they might not normally have got that experience.
Yeah. No, and it was like a cheap ticket price. It was all Australian. It was all, all the shows in KISS being able to come together, and it was a cheaper experience too because we didn't have all the expenses of the international DJs and the production values weren't as high, but it was just, again, it got back to being a raw party, which was fantastic. It was priceless seeing guys like you and other the KISS DJs being on the main stage, having a full house in front of you, seeing that, getting that experience was like, it was priceless. I mean, so look, from maybe a little bit of a spiteful, not auspicious start, and something good came out of it. So it was quite good. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a bunch of other brands that you've been involved with over the years from the UK. I'm thinking of the big super clubs like Gatecrasher, God's Kitchen, Global Gathering, Ministry of Sound. How did you end up working with all those different brands?
Well, look, we that was what we were doing initially when we were Mansion and whatever. We would be touring Renaissance or Ministry of Sound or whatever. Initially, because we just didn't have enough confidence in our ability to come up with recognisable brands. I don't know if we didn't have enough confidence, and I just thought that we thought that there was already a formula there that we could tour, and they were big enough and recognisable enough names to do that. And then I think what changed that was the Gatecrasher experience, because we built up the Gatecrasher show and we were doing docs parties with that. And we had the license to do all the Gatecrasher shows. And then Frontier and Michael Gudinski, at the end of when our first contract, and after we built it up, approached them and gave the Gatecrasher guys they blew them in with a CD deal, as well as, we want to be the touring agents of you and blah, blah, blah. And they took them to Melbourne Park, which was a bit of a disaster for them. But it was definitely an eye-opening thing for us to say, hang on, we've got to be the masters of our own destiny here, and we can't be reliant on people who own the brands. So I think that was how so that probably gave us the confidence to say, well, look, we've got to just do it ourselves and come up with our own IP. So we did a lot of those to start with, but that was definitely and look, I mean, and definitely working with those people, you get you definitely get experience, and you get a bit of an understanding of what it takes to have to maintain and grow a brand and be true to the brand and make that the most important thing. So make sure that the punters' experience is fantastic. And I think, and as we evolve, and it was all an organic thing. I think, you see these days people are trying to construct things that aren't organic. We came from a very organic and growth period where we all grew together and it all, it was a very slick operation at the end, but, it was very raw to start with. I thought some of the decor ideas that we came up with at the first couple of Summadayze, I'm going, oh my God, that was hideous. I can't believe we did that. But, that's all part of the growth period.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of things that you've done yourself, I guess the next juggernaut of an event was Future Music. So that kicked off, I think, in Sydney in 2006, and it ran through until 2015. So tell us that story.
Well, I think it was just a natural progression. I think with all partnerships, I think there was a little bit of tension between the hardware guys and us about what arenas, who was doing what and what was being done. And I mean, that just ran its course, and it was like a bit of a divorce. And so we were obviously wanted to continue on doing our thing. we had Brett Robson has just come over from Agent Mad to work with us on a couple of other things. So he was good at procuring talent as well. And Mark was still doing his thing. And Brett had moved up to Sydney, so we had basically an office up in Sydney as well. And we convinced Randwick Racecourse to, based on the fact that we were doing Melbourne Park and Flemington and the Myer Music Bowl and all these other iconic venues, that we had the wherewithal to do something at that venue, which was a big leap of faith for them as well. So the Future Music Festival was born, and we were still doing. I mean, the Future Music Festival was on whilst Two Tribes was still on in Melbourne, because we had Two Tribes going on. I think it was in Melbourne and Brisbane and West Australia, but in Sydney it was the Future Music Festival. And the following year, that was sort of like probably the last straw that broke the camel's back between the partnership with us, with Hardware and ourselves. And we went on to just do the Future Music Festival nationally, which was, another juggernaut, and like really taking it to the next level. Having Flemington, having Randwick, having Doomben, having those venues that you can do 50 or 60,000 people and 7 stages and just be limitless. And we're building 5 or 6 sites nationally at the same time, and really just having to get all this experienced crew in, from whether it was like guys from the Big Day Out or what, just all this experience is coming into. It was just such a massive learning curve, but such a rewarding experience as well.
Yeah. Definitely. So I think it was around this time as well that you went back to your roots and you got back into clubs. So it was Future Clubs, 2006.
Well, yeah, no, well, it was like, it was definitely, I don't know how we got, and look, I think part of the reason why we started doing events in the first place was that the rigors of having to do a weekly club night is so much harder on you physically, emotionally.
Yeah.
And at that time I've just had my kids and I had a small family, so the whole hey, I'm going to be a club promoter thing was wearing very thin. So to concentrate on doing events and having, okay, they're big projects, but you're working hard on them, but they're not taking you away from your daily or weekly life until that time of the year that you're putting the shows on.
They're more 9 to 5.
Yeah, they're more 9 to 5, and they're not 9 to 5. There's never been a 9 to 5 guy, but they're definitely they're definitely a hard thing to think. And but there was always a thing that you needed your base crowd, and over the period of years we'd sort of lost that, because where we started from, we had our loyal fans that would follow what we did from running the clubs, because we were putting on all this great stuff, and we sort of lost that a little bit and became this bit of the corporate machine, which was sort of like, you do the big parties, but you don't really have any soul. So it was always that was always in the back of the mind. And we had some great people that were working for us. Obviously, as you get older, you're more reliant on the younger staff that you have to give you some direction as to what music kids are into, and what so having that outlet of having the clubs, and again was good to have. And and we had people to do it, and wasn't really present for most of the club stuff. I would turn up maybe once every 3 weeks or whatever, and have a look around, and be the daggy old guy that came around and had a look at what was going on, and go, okay, oh, the kids of today, oh my god. Anyway, but it was good to do that again. So cool. But, very big. It was Famous was a big club. It was a good
it was huge. I mean, what was the capacity there? Like 3,000? It
was about 2,000, I think.
2,000, was it? Yeah. And that was with Alistair Kennedy as well?
Yeah, Alistair was involved in that. And we also had it going on in Sydney simultaneously at home. So
Right,
we had home nightclub and the QBH going. So Alice was involved in the you know, but I think it was more the kids like Caleb and crew.
Yeah.
That are still going strong now with their club nights in Melbourne. That was really there. That's where they Caleb and Phil,
Yeah.
that got, you know, they really cut their teeth on that night. And the concept worked very well in Sydney, because Sydney really is smaller clubs and whatever else, but to have that weekly big club night, and be able to, you know, two of the artists that were coming periodically between both of the nights, and with private jets going in between and whatever else, it was like, you know, it was pretty good.
Right.
Yeah.
So after 2015, no more Future Music Festival.
Well, look, I think the end was nigh when America finally cottoned on to dance music, and the economics of touring DJs went up exponentially. I mean, you know, we're not going to mention names, but, you know, some of the artists that we were touring regularly after America blew up had gone up 10 times as far as the price. So, you know, you're not on great margins to start with that, but once you're getting up to that level, you really, you're basically working for the artist fees, and, you know, the kids are only prepared to pay so much for a ticket price.
Yeah.
You've got a limited amount, and then we're so spoiled for so many years of what the ticket price would be, and how much they're prepared to pay. So you basically have to do something like the Future Music Festival, where you could have a capacity that we had to try and make it work. And then with the artist fees going up like 10 times, triple, you know, the whole artist budget's going up to triple. It was like, they got to be very, very difficult to make it financially viable. So we took a couple of hits with that, but then we decided that, look, the only way that we're going to be able to continue doing it is to get involved with, and that's when all the multinationals started coming into the game. And I think, you know, the hardware guys got the SFX deal, which was hats off to them. They did a good job with that, with the Stereosonic thing, and we were in the game with that as well. We had the Live Nation looking at us as well at the same time. And a few things where I think we were so maybe coming towards the end of our life cycle while others were coming up. But, you know,
them's the breaks, as they say.
We definitely can't complain. But then we got the guys from Mushroom, and Michael and Michael Dinsey and Frank Stavala, God love him, and all those guys to jump in. And they did, and we had 2014 and 15 with those guys, and they bankrolled it and gave it a punt and gave it everything that we could, and we put on some fantastic shows. But just the economics of it at that time meant that it just needed a correction, and it was just not going to work. And I think subsequent to us not going on, I think the following year Stereosonic went under as well, and it was all came down to what the fees, and you can't really blame the agents of the artists, because they don't know how long they've got as a life cycle to go. So they're going to get as much money as they possibly can for their artists, whether it's in Buenos Aires or Brisbane or Boston, wherever they can get the money, they'll get the money for them. So you can have the argument, you're killing the scene by putting the prices up by this much, but someone's prepared to pay it, so you've got to pay it and try and make it work. So it got to a point where it was, you know, I could have like, you know, cruised around Ibiza and played golf for a couple of years with the amount of money we lost for the last couple of years. But, you know, I really can't complain. I've had a really good ride.
Yeah. Because one of the things I never understood when I first started seeing festivals go to 2 days, and I was like, you know, when I was growing up and going to parties and hitting it hard, like I'd love to go to the party, but then hit the recovery and then another 5 recoveries after that. The last thing I want to do is go back.
Very funny, because we obviously one of the major favourite things that I got to do was go overseas on, like, you know, talent buying and scouting trips and doing all of that, and we'd end up invariably going to festivals overseas like Glastonbury, and which is obviously hamping and best times ever. You know, you're there with your mates and you're having your 3 days of like going around and seeing these great artists and hanging out with them. So, you know, and obviously the first ones that were doing that in Australia was Splendid, and I think copied the formula, but it probably was a natural progression that you want to have that experience where you have a multi-day festival experience. But because Australia is such a big place and the economics of what we had, where we're going with, and we were sort of more, maybe a little bit plagiaristic on the big day out format, because that was what was working at the time in Australia. And because the population bases in Australia mean that you can't expect people to travel to one area. Like in the UK, everyone will go to Glastonbury. It's like a 2-hour, 3-hour trip wherever you are. Whereas you can't just put on one big show in, like, I know Splendid does it, but usually you can't just put on one big show and make that work and then do a multi-day show. So you had to do, for the Australian climate, you had to build a site in every city to make it work. So that was the limitation. Yeah.
And you also got involved in what became the biggest underage festivals in the world at the time.
Yeah,
Good Life.
Look, again, it was all part of the economic climate of trying to work out, because obviously we're building 5 sites that are ginormous and huge and costly. Yeah. And we had all these artists that we were paying over the odds to play. So we needed to come up with some sort of formula to get them to play another show that wasn't going to cannibalise the patrons that were already coming to our show. And there was Paul Barrow was doing these little underages at the bowl, and they were doing quite well. And he'd approached us, but we'd already had this idea of saying, okay, well, we need to utilise the sites that we've got, because I think Coachella at the time was doing, the week before Coachella, they were doing a country and western show, I've forgotten what it's called, but a pretty reasonably sized show. But they were using the infrastructure that they built for Coachella to do this country and western show. So we thought, well, we need to do something that with the infrastructure we've got to build, the stages, the sound systems, the tents, but not cannibalise the show that we were already doing. So and obviously we're overage, and so it just made sense to do the underage show, and we could offer the artists, okay, we can pay you that much money, but you've got to do the underage show as well as the old. And they were sort of wrapped with that, because they were like getting to get a new fan base, which was that young crowd, to listen to them as well. So yeah, so that was definitely it was definitely pretty scary though, but it was great too, because I got to take my kids who were like maybe 10 and 11 or at the time, and they were getting to come onto stage and experience the shows, because I obviously wouldn't take them to they used to come to the setups of the other shows, but not actually come to them. But they were really enjoying themselves, taking their mates to underage shows with so that was quite good.
Got to experience it. Yeah. Now, since then, you know, in the last few years, there's been a lot of stuff in the news. Festivals have been under a lot of pressure, especially from the New South Wales Premier. What's the current situation in New South Wales?
Well, look, I mean, it's outrageous what they're doing to New South Wales. Obviously, but I've been through a number of different government restrictions, and you know, I had to set up we've worked well with, like, the Victorian government. We set up a code of practice for running safe events with a committee of various politicians and health department stuff and the AMBOs and the police, and we'd all sit around in a round table and come up with a playbook of how we should be doing things. And obviously drugs are involved, and people's health is involved, and you've got to come up with, like, what I'd like to say is a harm minimisation policy of how to get people to party safe.
Yeah.
But what they're doing in New South Wales is that they've had some, and admittedly they've had a hard time up there, and they've had some, you know, the last thing you want to see as a promoter is is a kid that's going to come to your gig not go home because they don't make it. It's just like, that's the biggest nightmare ever. You never want to see that. But they've pulled a rein in Sydney that is basically said, hey, this is a too hard basket. We're not going to look at what else is going around the world, whether it be pill testing or whatever else. And it's a huge economy too, the dancing. But it's not just an economy; it's a cultural rite of passage for people to experience that environment, which is a music festival, which is like, you know, we've just had a conversation for however long about how enjoyable and how great it is to see people enjoy themselves and have that experience. But what they're doing in Sydney is reprehensible, and it's you know, systematic, and it's calculated, and it's you know, they are basically wiping out the ability for people to put on events up there by harassing people as they're coming into events, by using the police in a way that they shouldn't be, by putting like you know, 50 or 60 police at the front door harassing people that haven't done anything wrong, and you know, why is anyone paying $150 to go and see they want to go and see DJ, but why are they paying that money to go and get harassed as they're walking through a front door? Yeah. So I think the politics of it is interesting. I think I definitely don't agree with what it's, and I've definitely been very vocal about my opposition to how they're going about it. They've got an option. There's plenty of other jurisdictions in the world that have done it a different way, particularly in Europe, and they embrace it over there, but they do it safely, and they take out, they understand, okay, well, people are going to take drugs. Let's make sure that they're doing it safely. Let's make sure that we've got all the medical stuff there. Let's make sure we've got the testing. Let's make sure that we've got all of the best practices in place. But we're not going to just try to shut it down. I mean, prohibition doesn't work. So if you shut down the well-run events that such as we put on, then where are people going to go? They're going to go to like backyard events that they don't have all the controls and don't have all of the production values and don't have the medical facilities and don't have all of the stuff that we put on. So, you know, it's definitely a sad state of affairs, particularly in New South Wales.
Yeah, I've heard. I think it was the Days Like This festival. They were having 60 police per 1,000 patrons, whereas in Victoria and Queensland it'd be one police per 1,000.
1 per 1,000 police ratio. Yeah, that's fair enough. But you know, to have that type of, you know, 1 per 100, it's like. It's you know, it's ridiculous. It's sort of over the top. The police aren't the problem. They're just the messengers. They can't. We have the roundtable meetings with them, and they're going, hey, look, we're just
following orders.
Following orders.
Yeah.
A bit like the Gestapo, really. No.
There you go. You heard it here first. So about 18 months ago, the Australian Festival Association was formed, and according to their website, their inaugural AGM is going to be held pretty soon. So can you tell us about this group, and how effective do you think they're going to be in achieving their?
Well, look, I think I don't want to criticize them too much, and they're just trying to look after their businesses, those guys, and it's really led by the Splendor guys and the Fuzzy guys, and it's a bit of a I think they had good intentions to start with, but they were definitely self-interest group, and they weren't really looking after the scene so much as looking after their own interests, in my opinion. But look, and then look, they sort of got burnt by that too, because they'd done such an effective job of saying, we're starting this organisation up, and they weren't. So that when the New South Wales government put in to effect a ranking system of events that were, what was the term they used?
High risk
events, the high risk events and not high risk events. The fuzzy events and the Splendor events were left off it, despite meeting the criteria of being high risk. They'd had deaths, they'd had that had various other things in place, but they were left off because they had such an effective lobbying group to say, well, we better leave these guys alone, else we might get hurt. But then then that sort of bit them on the bum a little bit, because like then there was like events like that I was involved with, like days like this, that really wasn't a high risk event and shouldn't have been classified as that, or Laneway Festival that shouldn't have been classified as a high risk event and was. And then the shock jocks in New South Wales actually gone to the ministers and saying, hang on, how come these events are being classified as high risk, yet, you know, they've got great operators, they've no track record, they've got no thing. But these other ones that, because is it because they're on a committee that they've just formed?
Yeah.
So look, look. There's no. Is there a right way? We've all got to try and work together to change the policy of the New South Wales government. That's what we all agree on. We decided to try and do a class action against them. They took us off the high risk event category, but what are they still doing? They're still putting 50 cops at the front door. They're still harassing the patrons and coming in. They're still doing all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And now that the whole COVID thing has hit,
of course, yeah.
And it's definitely, you know, I fear for the events industry. I'm sure eventually it will bounce back, but there's going to be, I think, a convergence of multinationals and higher profile event operators that can last it out, and there's not going to be the breadth of talent that is available to put on great shows anymore, because at the moment it's a devastating period of time.
Now, recently you've started. Did you start Division Agency, or you're?
No, I didn't start it. I was
no.
Scott Robertson. He used to work with us at Future. He was one of our bookers, and particularly in the techno scene for us. So he was like in charge of our Cocoon area at Future Music Festival, for instance. So him, Daniel Tuma was also worked for us for quite a while too, and was obviously head of pitch and novel. So I had taken a 2-year sabbatical and was really just playing golf badly and not doing very much at all. Yeah. And had a couple other things that I was involved with, in restaurants and various other things, but nothing to anything. I was getting pretty bored, and Scott reached out and said, "Hey, I'd really love for you to get involved and help." And you know, I was going, it's like the Godfather scene. I'm getting sucked back in. I was out. Yeah. Getting pulled back in.
You cut the cord.
Yeah. So yeah, obviously that was just it was too, and I loved it so much that I've never turned it on. It was a good opportunity, and I loved being involved in it. And we put on some like really cool little boutique great shows, and the staging and the vibe of those shows have been fantastic. So it's been a great project for me to be involved in. I've loved working with the guys. Cool. But yeah, no. So that's just a little thing that I'm doing at the moment, which is quite cool.
Sounds fun. Now, I guess you can't have the highs without the lows in any industry. So would you mind touching on just a couple of the low points in your career?
Oh, look, I think it's pretty well publicised that we had to liquidate a company or two, which was a bit of a fall from grace for all of us, particularly when you're you know, you're used to doing things in a certain way. You don't want to have to go through that. So yeah, those definitely, look, shows you basically, when you're a promoter, you're a professional punter. Yeah. So you're saying, okay, I'm going to put this lineup together, and I'm going to pay this much money for it. I'm going to punt that. We're going to get that many people that are going to turn up. And when you're talking the figures that we were talking through at the end there, they were pretty heavy punts. You know, it's like
that way.
You're going to the whale table at the casino. You're not hanging around at the Albany room. You're going up to so when you get one of those not quite right, the numbers that you're hemorrhaging are kind of are up there. So look, not ideal, but it's all whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, I reckon.
Absolutely. And I guess I think you guys were hit particularly hard with the passing of Keith Flint as well.
Oh yeah, no. So yeah, so obviously that was one of our new ventures too, which I'm still very excited about, is our partnership with TEG to tour bands and do concert shows and whatever else. And obviously we've departed from Back in the Future days, so we've been touring the Prodigy and you know, had formed a very, very close friendship with a lot of the guys that we've toured, but more, you know, probably one of the closest bonds that we've had was us and the Prodigy guys, them and the Chems and a few others, but definitely the Prodigy guys. So when they had their latest album come out and they wanted to do the tour, obviously the Notorious tour, I convinced the guys at TG to help us put it on, and they obviously the guys didn't want to tour with anyone else that was putting offers in, because they were just, you know, this sort of a bit of a family thing. So it was fantastic to get them back out and do the tour, and we had some fantastic shows and you know, and it's still very, very raw that what happened with Keith.
Yeah.
You know? So it was sort of like, it was just a month or two after our last show in Auckland, and we'd had such a great night afterwards, and we were all hanging out and celebrating the tour and reuniting, and then the news came through and didn't want to believe it, and then, you know, ended up going over to and celebrating his life at the funeral and all of that stuff. But it was just, you know, such a sad time.
A loss, yeah.
Such a loss. Yeah.
So with obviously you've done so many festivals over the years. Is it impossible to pick a favorite? Is it just like your favorite kid?
No,
you know,
I'm trying. It's like it's asking me to pick who my favorite kid is. You know,
yeah.
You know, no. There's just been very blessed in my life to do what I love doing, and I suppose if there's any advice that you can give to anyone, it's just pick what you love doing, and it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah.
You know, sure, we're like working ridiculously long hours, and there's so much stress, and you're trying to put out so many fires. But when you're doing something that you love doing, it really doesn't feel like work. So if you can be blessed enough to do that, then I think you're winning.
What about the artists? Like you just mentioned the Prodigy. Like from a strictly personality perspective, who are some of your favorite guys that you've?
Look, you know, and I think that you gravitate to the people that you sort of secretly a bit of a fan of. Yeah. So the Prodigy, obviously, I was always a huge fan of those guys. The Chemical Brothers as well. I mean, they're very good friends of mine. You know, Fat Boy Slim, Left Field. You know, as I was saying before, you pinch yourself. These are the tracks of my youth and what I've grown up with, and I'm getting to, you know, hang out and go and party with these guys and do whatever, and then just be mates with them.
Yeah.
And you just forget who they are. Sometimes you forget that, but then you see them on stage and the effect that they have on people around you. You just go, wow, yeah, they're
next level.
Next level. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So how do you think, like looking at the crowds that you get at the festivals over the years, how do you think the festival crowd has evolved from back in the mid-90s to today? Has it changed?
Look,
much,
I mean, I'm getting up there in age, obviously
now. Me and you both.
Look, I've been to some recent gigs. I was luckily enough to do some stuff with the Untitled guys, and when we got the Solomon show over the line for the big warehouse in Footscray, and they were having a bit of trouble getting the licenses, so they reached out to me and said, "Hey, maybe you can help." And
yep.
I don't know how we got it on.
Yeah.
So that was quite good. And I went and saw the pit show up in Sydney. We were luckily enough to have Sven Barth on at days like this, and he was going to play at pitched the following day. So he said, come on the plane with us to go to that. So I ended up going there with him to the show.
I've heard he doesn't mind a party.
He was very good, lad.
Yeah.
He was
Best behaviour.
Hey, I'm going to play the best I possibly can. I'm going to. So he's like, we had a couple of champagnes, a couple of beers, and whatever else. But no, it's not spending. Hey, spending Ibiza's a different story than it was. I tell you.
But the crowd themselves, do you reckon people went harder back in the day, or that's not quite true?
Look, I don't know. I mean, look, I think that you want to, as you always want to say, your generation is the one that was.
That's where I was going.
Party, like the 90s and the 2000s are the best ever parties ever. Yeah. But I think it's whenever you grow up and you're in that sweet spot, it's the best ever party. So
of course, yeah.
Look, I'm probably definitely. I would definitely say that when it was starting and that period of time was definitely the sweet spot. But it definitely was for me. Yeah, absolutely. Whether that would be for the kids today, I don't know. I'm not going to argue with my kids. Exactly. Why are you listening to that techno and house music? It's all. I'm going. What do you want to listen to? They go, let's put this trap on. I'm going, oh my god, that's fucking ridiculously bad.
Yeah, my son's the same.
So it's funny because you go, hey, isn't that what all of the parents that were around when we were starting to do what we were saying, were listening to what we were listening to, going, oh, what are you doing? And it's the same. I think it's the same with anything.
It hasn't got any words in it. How could that be music?
Yeah, that's right.
That old chestnut. Okay, well, we're almost at the end. This is the second last question. So bit of a marathon episode, this one. So
how long have we gone for? Goodness me.
Yeah, so an hour and a half in almost. So
God.
Okay, so before we get to the,
I really do. I need a drink or something.
Yeah, do you want to grab another drink?
No, it's okay. No.
Okay, so before we get to the final question, which is always the your favorite party story of all time, I just wanted to ask, there's so many great people behind the scenes that the average punter doesn't get to know about, but they're just awesome people and they do an awesome job. Anyone in particular that stands out for you in that category?
Look, we were so blessed to have so many good people working with us. And I couldn't be prouder of where lots of them, it feels like there's a little bit of a nursery that came out of our future office of people that have gone on to do some fantastic things. But I don't want to leave anyone out because there's just such a myriad of people that we've been blessed to work with over the years that have just been so passionate and so, good at what they do, and just like they just give everything to you like it was their own business. It was like it was more of a passion and more of it that everything had to be right. Look, just to pick out a couple of names, and it's not fair for the hundreds and hundreds of people that work with us that were just so good at what they did and so passionate about what they did. So, to all of them, and I'm really proud to see the ones that have kicked on and are doing great stuff now. And it really just feels you get a bit of a sense of pride. You feel like a bit of a proud parent that
absolutely
done really well. But we were very, very blessed to have a great passion, and I think that's what music does too. I mean, it brings like-minded people together, and people who work in the music industry are very unheralded, and sometimes it's like, it might seem glamorous, but it's not glamorous when you're trudging through trying to get dealing with whatever you have to deal with, which is the myriad of things that you have to come deal with. I mean, it can be glamorous. It can be great afternoons and great times and great weather, but most of the time it's a shit job.
Yeah. But one thing I forgot to ask, though, or this is a good point to ask, is what's on the horizon for you? What's coming up?
Oh, well, look, I mean, that's a very difficult question at the moment. It's like things are so, I particularly at the entertainment hospitality space at the moment, you just don't know when, how, if it's coming back, and when and what that environment looks like. It's definitely, we've got some great ideas and I've got a great conglomerate of people that we've got together do some good projects. We've got the TEG guys that we're still looking to do some tours with, but you know, we had a number of tours that we had penciled in that we had to cancel, and we're by no means the most affected in the entertainment industry at all. But that's a very tough question to answer at the moment. I wish I knew. I'm sure at the end of it, there's going to be a lot of opportunity, and it's just a matter of who's there to
capitalize on it. I guess.
On that. Yeah.
Okay. It is the question I always look forward to most in every episode. What is your favourite party story of all time that you're happy to talk about on the podcast?
I think there's a duty of care and a an unwritten rule that what goes on tour stays on tour. So there's definitely a cone of silence and a vault that is definitely in place with me. So you will never see an autobiography, a reveal all, tell all story, but there has been some very, very fun and funny, inappropriate and whatnot stories that I could tell. But I think, so without going into the funniest and best times and whatever else, I think that the most rewarding thing sometimes is when things are at the very bleakest and the worst. And there's several times where we're running outdoor music festivals that are at the whims of the elements, and particularly weather.
Summadayze 2006.
Yeah, look, there's been so many.
That was a killer.
It's about nearly blown over by what. Yeah. But just being able to get through that. You know, I think one time there was like a little cyclone. Summer field days up at the Gold Coast, there was a little cyclone came through. And the event plan was to have a number of circus tents in a row, and because the wind had got up so much that we couldn't actually put the tents up. And this is how great the music industry is. I mean, we got on we knew that like the big day out was on. A few weeks later, the stages were on the road up around New South Wales, where we rang up the guys of the day and said, "Hey, we need those stages to put this show on." They rang the suppliers up. They said all of a sudden we were building roads with rocks and various something, getting the toilet trucks to suction all the excess water off the ground, building stages, getting on. And then those are the things. So all these great shows that never went off without a hitch, they're inconsequential, because the shows that you never thought you were fucking going to get on, you actually got on for however the fuck you did it.
Yeah.
And you just go, oh wow, and you stayed up for 48 hours and you just built fucking shit in mud. Or, you know, with the whole of Randwick's underwater, and we've got guys in like forklifts trying to push up the hydraulics of a stage to get the show on, where we've got a 50,000 person sellout show coming up in 2 days. If we don't get the stage up, we've got to cancel it. It's like, so all of those here, you know, those things, or having to knock down a dam to get, so that we've got a show on, and the water level at Doomben is rising so much that if the water gets up to a certain level on a generator, it's going to cut everything out. So that we're sitting next to a dam, and I've gone to an excavator driver. Do you reckon you can knock that wall off that dam over so the water can drain? And sure enough, he got an excavator and knocked over a wall in the water, and that just as it was about to cut the generator off, it went down. And it was like, we got the show. So I think those are my favourite stories. I think that all of those ones are the ones that are the ones that you go, wow, how the fuck did we do that?
Yeah. It's like a military operation.
Yeah.
Nice one. Well,
Yeah.
Chase, it's been an absolute pleasure. Is there anything else that we might have missed that you wanted to add? Or
oh, mate, I don't know. I'm just possibly, but no, I don't know. There is. Yeah, I think we covered pretty much everything, really.
Fantastic. Well, like I said, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thanks very much for taking the time out today to have this wee chat. It's been great.
Pleasure, man. Pleasure. Hey, I love your series, and I hope good luck with it all. Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
all right.
Cheers.
Cheers, buddy.